Alright, welcome back to a more casual discussion of Monogatari Off Monster Season episode 7. We're gonna go through it. I have a couple of timestamps down that I want to take a look at. Namely, the first one we're gonna look at is 018. We do have the marionettes that I pointed out in the first analysis that I did. Interestingly enough, we do have 4 of them, so I do wonder if this is the same number that Shinobu's forms that we've seen in Kisu Monogatari wear, or not. We do also seem to start, like, this is when the 1 falls, so I do feel like maybe this is like Act 1, because we had the theater kind of thing going up with her here. Right, so apparently the Waza part of Wazamonogatari is pronounced go and means business, work, act, or deed. It also can mean Buddhist karma, so I do wonder if this is a connection that we can kind of put in, or also it can mean performance, and since all of this is kind of built up like a theater play, I do wonder if that's what the connection here is. If we put it into Google Translator just as is, it's saying tales of deeds. Interesting. Tales of deeds of events, right? An event story. But we do also have, if we put Wazamono in, which is the basic first part of it, as we would do with Bakemono and Monogatari, we get out sharp sword. Interesting. All of these can kind of be applicable, so I do wonder what ends up being applicable. Maybe some people can call it out, or if this is important for like the story to come and we're gonna get more of an idea of what it actually means down the line, maybe don't tell me, and then at the end of the arc we can actually talk about it. But very interesting that Wazamonogatari means sharp, like Wazamono is sharp sword, and Waza itself seems to be a deed or an act or whatever, and that Wazamonogatari is translated as Tales of Deeds. Yeah, but yeah, that's kind of the start of all of that. But about what I was saying in terms of like the acts, it feels like this is not what it is, that the 1 is Act 1 and then the 2 is Act 2 and whatever, because in many ways this feels too quick, right? Too snappy, of just being like Act 9 that we have it in the end of that. And it also feels too snappy for chapter numbers, or for the numbers of deaths. It doesn't add up with when she says, okay, I've died this many times, now I've died this many times. It doesn't add up, so I'm at a loss at what this actually could mean. Next shot we're looking at is 055, where we do have an amazing light and shadow shot. This is so fucking cool. And she seems so sinister in this shot because the light is meeting one half of her face and the other half of her face is completely in darkness. We don't even see the eyes. We only see like the contours and everything. The other cool thing about this shot specifically is that some of the very thin strands of her hair almost seem like strings that a marionette would be roped up on. The interesting thing about the shot right here, about the next shot that I noted down, is that we have version 3 of Deftopia actually sitting on the throne, while we are highlighting, kind of shedding a light on version 4 seemingly, because there's a little gap between like 1, 2 and the next one. Version 4 of her, which I don't know what it means. I really don't know what that means, because she was, especially if we're lighting up like the final form of her basically, and then we do see her in darkness with the light behind her kind of shining like a god figure or something, and then she's empathizing it was not appetite. Is that like her future self being like, in retrospect it wasn't appetite? Right, this is, and what we're lighting up is her future self actually talking about the one sitting on the throne, which is the one we're seeing the story of right now, or is this kind of different? It's also very interesting that we show her as a marionette. So what does it mean in the grand scheme of the story? Is she just a puppet that was being played by Asarola? Or like that in the end of this episode we actually make the pact and we're like, right, I suppose I have to stick around with you if you put it like that and whatnot, but Acerola actually wanted that to happen and she kind of just manipulated everything to go that way? Or is it more like she herself just feels like she was being controlled in some way, right? Maybe not even by Acerola herself, but more like by the power that she possesses. Very curious. I don't think we can put really I can put my thumb on it yet, so we'll have to see how that turns out. I also like the eye shot in 133. It reminds me a lot of what we had with Tsukihi in Tsukihi Undo, where she's got the match and it reflects in her eyes, or with what we had with Ononoki multiple times, where stuff reflected in her eyes. Nadeko too, when Nadeko was being attacked by other Nadeko, we did have the flash of the chisel in her eyes. They have a knack for these eye shots, the new Shaft, and I really like it. I do love these shots, especially if they're lit up as well as they are here, where we do have that very somber candlelight shining on the face. Many different forms in which we use light and shadow in this episode to actually accentuate certain facial expressions or certain moods or certain atmospheres, which I really love. 145, we have a glare that could kill somebody, right? Not just the one I just showed, but this one as well. Just looking over you. Right? Really, really annoyed by that, which I find very interesting. How they have their interactions. I died again. Fucking hell. Love how it looks when she takes up her hair and whatnot. And she eats herself, like I said in the main episode. How does that work? 205, we do have her looking very much like Kiss Shot. I remember a couple of frames in Kisu and in later Monogatari stuff that looked exactly like that when it showed Kiss Shot. All the way down to Kiss Shot also, I think, having somewhat reddish or dark reddish eyeshadow. So there's so much that she's taken from her, because right now as Acerola, she doesn't look like that. She looks more like a natural beauty kind of person, right? Like graceful and just the aura, all natural, all saint-like, all of these things. Though she's anything but saint-like, I feel, in many ways, because obviously it's not her own fault, but she's taken all of these things and almost like a convenience is trying to find a way to absolve herself of these feelings of guilt that she feels through the nations she apparently ruined. I do wonder what the half moon represents in our different displays here. What does it mean, right? Are we just supposed to see this as this is like kind of an orientation point of when this happens, right? So we see earlier on when we have the crescent moon and she flies to meet Acerola for the first time, we see like, okay, this was earlier, and now we have the half moon, and later on, like maybe next episode, we see the full moon. We know that some time has passed, and this is kind of supposed to orient us as we're skipping through various points in time, not in a chronological order. Or is that like some kind of symbolism, because it's very cut in half, and even later on, we do use it very deliberately in a way to show certain things. And the moon is clouded as well, so there could be something to read into that. But I can't, like, as with many shots in this specific episode, I can't put my thumb on it. I can't point exactly like, yeah, this is what's happening, because obviously we're at the beginning of an arc. There's stuff that's gonna be different. There's stuff that's gonna be not as usual. At 228, I think it's very interesting how she puts literal emphasis on I eat the lives I kill. It sounds almost like she's like, I have the responsibility that if I kill a life, if I don't intend to kill a life and I actually do it, I'll eat it as well, right? This is kind of like a duty for me. When I do it, I don't want to waste the life that I just killed. I'll eat it, even if it tastes bad. And then she looks at Acerola in a way of almost just kind of blaming her and being like, you killed so many lives and you're not taking responsibility for that, in a way. But because you continue living on, you continue to live recklessly, and even though you maybe take your precautionary measures to not let it happen easily that people die because of you, you still let it happen by just moving from country to country and interacting with people. At 3:28, we do have a shot where I do feel like I can't pin it down yet what the black and white shots mean. In this specific case, I would say it's rage, right? It's not an intent to kill, it's an appetite, right? It's like pushing back against an idea that is being put on you, and you're like, no, that's not what this is. I'm being annoyed at you just suggesting that thing. And later on, when she talks to Tropical-esque, we do have the same thing, where she's like, she's kind of like, are you implying, or are you disagreeing with me? Are you trying to tell me what to do? And then she's pushing back to that. But there's a couple of scenes throughout this episode where I feel like this can't be just pinned down to anger or annoyance or frustration. It feels like I still can't completely understand what the black and white shots are supposed to represent in this specific case. At 4:01, we do have a beautiful, we're gonna skip over that. The only thing I'm gonna say to that is we had a similar shot with Rafnadeko, actually, when she was in a state like that, where we had like the black and red negative image, which is really cool. A really cool thing to look at, really. It seems I have met my death for the 5th time. And we're on the throne, which is really cool. 4:01, it's a really Anno Londo. That's what the feeling I get. If you know, you know. Starved to death this time, and we're jumping back in time when she hasn't met Acerola yet. I was like maybe hypothesizing that the Roman numerals mean that the weeks that are passing since the story began, but this is kind of weird, right? Because we're jumping ahead and then back and whatnot, and it's really hard to tell if that is what it is, because it doesn't feel like it. If we go like up to 9 weeks and whatnot, it feels weird. I do have that question, that line that I find very impressive, where she says like, she ruined an entire kingdom by smear. Holy shit, that is an amazing shot. Cool that I found that one again. Right, with the line art and everything. A lot of these are like wallpaper-like shots. It's amazing. I might actually make that my thumbnail. It's really cool. Yeah. But yeah, what I was saying, she was gonna say something like, she ruined an entire nation simply by existing. What kind of monster is this woman? Right? She sees a monster, actually sees you as a monster for doing something so insane, so incomprehensible from like just the perspective that even she is at. 706 has, yeah, I love how we represent that in like a church mural style. We do see the witch, we do see the people killing themselves, we do see the kingdom shattering, literally. And the interesting thing about this is that we have a portrait of Acerola herself, and it's shattering, which implies kind of low-key that she herself shattered on these events happening, right? I mean, in a way, you can interpret that in a lot of ways as like a monkey's paw, kind of be careful what you wish for thing, but at the same time, you feel like there was, even in the beginning, before the witch, there was this incredible beauty that she had, and nobody, like, everybody talked about it. Everybody's life was just about that. So even before it turned into literal supernatural oddity-like dimensions, there was already a big, almost, you might say, parasocial focus on that, right? To a degree that somebody, like a celebrity, is being put on a very, very high pedestal, even higher than, like, can't do anything wrong. And if she does anything wrong, then what I thought was wrong must have been wrong all along. And what she thinks is right and wrong is the right way to see it, right? Kind of like that, I do feel. And we have the parallels again with Nadeko, where we do have the, right, beautiful, cute, whatever, right? Great to look at, can do no wrong. In a way, right? In a sense, you're projecting your stuff onto her and you're assuming, yeah, this is who she is. And obviously, maybe Acerola, in the way she conducts herself, or did conduct herself back then, maybe she wanted to please people as well, right? Wanted to make it right for them. Because she had all that intellect, all that intelligence, all that talent as well, but it frustrated her that people couldn't see that beyond her beauty she had so much more. which in a way is almost selfish, you want to say. As you're like, oh yeah, you revere me for this and that, but why do you not revere me for this other stuff that I myself hold more valuable? It's kind of also reflecting in a way how sometimes people who are too perfect can be ruinous to other people. And that's not even in a way, like, not in this way of like, oh no, I'm not worthy, whatever. I mean, these kinds of behaviors exist as well, where you do feel like you've offended somebody you hold in very high regard, and then you feel very bad about yourself, which is, it's not always great. It's not always the right thing to feel, because sometimes we put people higher than we actually should put them, and sometimes we interpret our own interactions, our own actions as way more harshly than the people who are actually receiving them do. But even beyond that, even that aside, we do have moments where we're just seeing that people have barely any flaws, seemingly. Obviously, I don't think that in reality there exists a lot of people that have no flaws, if there exist any. But just the mere fact that somebody doesn't have a discernible flaw is kind of showing us ourselves the mirror, right? Like in terms of like Hanekawa that we have here, where Hanekawa is like, with her parents, the big problem was that she was kind of showing them the mirror of how awful they were in comparison to her, right? Even if they maybe were relatively okay people, although kind of a father hitting her daughter, I wouldn't say okay people, but you know, right? That the flaws that you have get accentuated so much if you are in the presence of somebody who has very little to no flaws that you can discern. And maybe this is one of the parallels that we see between Hanekawa that one of the commenters pointed out last episode, where they were like, I can see a couple of parallels with Hanekawa as well, but I don't want to say too much. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of can see that as well. Like, we'll talk about that in just a second with Kiss Shots, no, not Kiss Shots, Acerola's behavior when she interacts with Deftopia, and how they kind of back and forth dialogue, and those couple of moments where she's pissed off at her response of something, and it feels like very Hanekawa-esque. Alright, we jump to 806, where we do have oh yeah, she looks like a bat here when she's when she's putting out her cloak, kind of her only piece of clothing. She looks very much like a bat, which I very much appreciate with the symbolism. I only beat humans that I kill myself, right? And we see the black and white, which I feel like, is she annoyed? Is she annoyed at him, and that is why we see the black and white? Or is there more to it, right? When it comes to her principles, maybe, or her stubbornness, or other things that lie in her past. I don't know. Maybe. I love the full pan at 850, where we just go across the entire form, right? And zoom in on her. Kind of almost establishes dominance from her, right? If we go from the ground up, from the feet all the way up to the face in a very traumatic fashion. I do love this. This is a beautiful painting-esque panel here, where we do see her kind of with all of the dead skeleton corpses, or marked for death corpses of her nation, and next to her stands the Grim Reaper, basically having her in his grip, basically her being a compatriot to death in a way, which that is heavy symbolism. It's haunting in a way. We do have a lot of shots that kind of accentuate the impact that Acerola does have on people. We talked about the black and about the grayscale a lot, so we can skip that from the main episode. Love that look when she's looking over her shoulder back to her. And the way Deftopia dresses with like the open back, really cool, really more than cool, but you know what I mean. But yeah, we do have this where she opens up her eyes again, and she's literally opening up to looking into her eyes, which kind of very symbolic in a way, because this is normally what you get from somebody you are romantically involved with or very infatuated with, right? A very close connection. Looking somebody in the eyes is normally in conversation, of course, but also the eyes in many cultures are seen as the window to the soul. So looking somebody into the eyes is like peering into somebody's soul, into somebody's emotional inner state. So it feels very intimate when we do it. And that is also why some people can't always hold the gaze of other people, because there's an inherent embarrassment that comes with people who are socially too aware maybe, or socially anxious, where they feel like they can't look people into the eyes too long, because otherwise they are going to reveal too much of themselves, too much of their own anxiety, too much of their own insecurities, too much of their own inner world maybe, that they maybe consider unseemly, despite that not necessarily being the case. I do love how we're having that casual conversation, and then she mentions she's a vampire, and then we flash the teeth, and after that we go down with her. Really, I didn't think they actually exist. It's a very nonchalant response. She's hanging from the tree like a bat. By the way, a tree in the middle of a house, very surreal, right? I mean, it exists, but very surreal, very fantasy-esque, but adds perfectly to the atmosphere. I do love how she's like basically a background object together with the tree, and kind of causing some kind of semi-symmetry happening here that is framing Acerola into like the key element of the shot, the key element of our focus and attention, because she's so much in the shadow and part of the shadow that only Acerola in the light and in the firelight is getting accentuated here, and we focus on that. We ignore everything else, and this is kind of almost like a picture frame that's framing her in, or a camera lens, or whatever you want to call it. In 1318 we actually have, this is what I wanted to point out. I apologize for being unable to abide by that request. Something wrong? No. It's like, it's right. I'm not gonna mention it here, but you tick me off with the way you respond to me, right? That distancing yourself, that being holier than thou, which is perfectly what kind of was a parallel to what Hanekawa displayed in many situations where people just felt like they are insufficient, right? They are smaller than her. They are not up to her level, and that without somebody just letting it hang out. That is kind of like what Deftopia is doing, right? What many, like what you would expect maybe Kiss Shot in current times, or Shinobu is doing, where she's like, ha ha, kakaka, I'm above you, right? I did notice the kakaka, by the way, so apparently she picked it up from her. Interesting. She picked a lot up from her sense of style and fashion to a degree. A couple of behaviors, I already see that, like the influence. So it must have been like, in the end, that down the line we have somewhat of a really, really close mutual relationship going on. Either way, yeah, this entire attitude that Deftopia has is more like, I think I'm better than everybody, and I'm gonna put that out there, right? And in most cases that might be actually what's true, and in some cases I just use that as an excuse in order to justify what I'm doing or my behavior, or to mask what I'm really feeling on the inside. But that is her kind of just being out there with it. It's way more subtle with people like Hanekawa, or in this case Asarola Hime, because we do have a behavior that on the surface seems a lot more noble, a lot more humble, a lot more polite and distant and non-offensive. But in that way, you are not giving your counterpart any area of attack, right? Any way to actually dive into who you actually are. Because this is a shield, this is a mask, this is like, right? I'm putting all of the white out, and I'm shoving the black somewhere else. I'm just pure white, I'm purity, I'm better than you, but without saying it, without letting it hang out, because that in itself would mean that a part of me is not better than you on a morality level, right? Because being arrogant, considering yourself above other people is unseemly, and this is not what she displays. She displays these things subtly. She displays these things in a way that you can't blame her directly or call her out for it. And this is what is making people in general being very either infatuated and in awe, or pissed off. Because that can also be the result, because it's showing you the mirror of, yeah, look, I have all of these little petty feelings inside of me. this person doesn't have those flaws that I have, right? And then you start kind of envying her and hating her for that, or hating yourself for not being the way she is. And in people like that, people who are like Deftopia, who are used to being at the top of the pyramid, who are used to being the most powerful person in the room, the most revered person in the room, to not having to consider themselves with the opinion of any other person, right? The lion doesn't consider themselves with the opinion of sheep. Shout out Game of Thrones. People like her get pissed off by this attitude because it makes that one aspect of themselves that maybe could be criticized as being lesser than, makes that one aspect of themselves that is all about pride and standing above other people, but putting it out there, displaying it for all the world to see. This aspect, suddenly it's thrown into the mirror and they see that they themselves don't have that emotional distance, that they can shove their pride away, and that maybe in this specific aspect they don't hold up to that person, and that pisses them off because they know that is coming from a place that is very close to who they are, but it's masking behind this atmosphere of purity and emotional distance and politeness that they themselves do not possess, that they themselves maybe even think might be unseemly to be a person that is so much above everybody else and not display that. That's my read on it, at least. Maybe a little bit too long of a tangent over here. Again, we do have that, her being holier than thou, very shiny and whatnot. But what I love, like, look at that. This is one-to-one. This is literally a Hanekawa face. No doubt about it. I've seen this face before in the style of like Shaft. This is Hanekawa. And we get at the back, we get maybe a Senjugahara-esque face or a face of somebody else who's like, you, right? That is Deftopia's face right here. She's like, you little bitch. Stop acting like that. Stop being like that. And I think like it's very interesting that we have the enchantress aspect where it's like she's opening the eyes, she's shocked, right? The hair is flowing, everything is glittering. We effectively, I love how they effectively use the zoom-ins in order to show a dramatic effect, like the pull this power of Asarola seems to have, right? Her aura is really having this much of an effect on her, and with using the zoom in to display that, she's having an effect on her without doing much of anything. That is the insane thing. And we do have that twofold, on the one hand with the enchanting thing, and on the other hand with her attitude and her behavior towards her, which is kind of frustrating and pissing her off, kind of ticking her off. So it's going in right in both senses. I do feel that, at least. I mean, obviously we can see that Deftopia's attitude towards Asarola's behavior, in a way, part enchanted, right? Part infatuated and part pissed off, which kind of feels to me a lot like the relationship of Araragi to Hanekawa in the very beginning, or up to Tsubasa Taiga, where we did have all of that stuff going on, and she was just too pure for him, too white, too perfect for him, in a way. And that is kind of like this love-hate relationship that came out of that. Maybe I'm also misremembering or misinterpreting that. I always have difficulty with saying misinterpreting, because it sounds weird, right? Anyway. And she's going into a blood rage again here. Also, I find it very interesting. It feels like Deftopia is partially immune to her beauty, in a way, right? Because she can interact with her normally, and she's not getting driven to madness immediately, despite her being past the point where she had that curse laid on her, where her inner beauty is driving people mad. So in a way, it feels like she has some kind of innate resistance to that. But at the same time, we do have that it makes her so desirable, right? And so unique and so like irritating in a way that her instincts take over, and then she gets enchanted after all in the end, right? Like, it's in the beginning she has that resistance, but that resistance falls in certain moments, and then she gets overwhelmed by her own bloodlust and tries to go in, and then she dies again and wakes up again, and then it's almost like a small reset that's happening there. 1436, we do see that, yeah, I was gonna point that out. It's very interesting how here she looks like a doll on the ground, which is very, Very interesting, very cool. I do still wonder what that means, what that represents. We're probably gonna find out down the line, but so far I can't put my finger on it yet. 1509 I do love, like, we had that with the heart. I do wonder if the actual heart, if it's just represented like an apple because it tastes juicy like an apple for her. I do love that shot. Right, bird's eye shot, amazing, beautiful how we put them into frame. Also very interesting, they're sitting back to back, not looking at one another, both looking in opposite directions. And the tree branch, a thick, right, like slightly convoluted, branching out tree branch is separating their personal spaces, right? So they are separated in a way. They're still feeling each other out. They're not looking at one another necessarily, maybe also because of like being in danger of getting too involved and all of that. Her beauty is just too much, yeah? I mean, she knows that herself. I find it very interesting, this concept that she's displaying here, where she says like, she is searching for a way to save somebody. Feels very selfish to me in a way, that she wants to do that despite endangering millions of people, right? What is she trying to achieve here? Is that redemption for herself? She later says she wants to do it in case that anybody else ever has that disease, curse, whatever phenomenon, and so they don't have to kill themselves. But isn't that a little bit far-fetched? It feels hollow to me when I hear that, when I read that. It feels hollow. It feels like an excuse, like she's putting that in front in order to have a justification to continue doing that. Maybe she just hasn't particularly strong will to live. She tries to find a way to live with herself after all of this happened. Can she even kill herself? That's a question as well, right? But she kills millions of people by going through these different countries in order to find a reason to save one single person, and that's supposed to be her redemption. I called her selfless last time, but it feels to me almost like she's very selfish in that way. But maybe, I mean, we'll have to dive deeper into that, right? Her motivation, why she does the things she does, but it feels very selfish to me in many ways. 1708, she acknowledges, right, Deftopia acknowledges that she has a conscience. She's like, I don't want to deny you your conscience, but I think it's not advisable to continue the method you've been doing it. Because as much as you might have a modicum of a conscience, or maybe feel bad about the people, you don't feel bad enough about them, or you wouldn't keep doing it. That's how I see it. That's how I read it. And at 1740, she's kind of suggesting that she could be efficiently using the fact that all of the people are dead around, right? She has access to everything now, and she generally, Asarola generally looks like she's like, I never thought of that. It's very curious. She never thought of that possibility with all her intelligence and beauty and whatnot. 1801 has a beautiful painting where she points out that she is an immortal monster. I love that. That is beautiful, right? Like some regal painting that you see in a castle or something. And she looks so amazing in this one as well. Not quite like she looks in our current shot, so I do wonder if she can change forms as well. How much of like Shinobu or Kishot's power we could project onto her, because they have a similar or the same origin ultimately. 1805, we jump to this picture, like very imposing from Deftopia's point of view, but also interestingly enough, we're still in the bird's perch point of view. It's a very cool shot of us just looking objectively at the situation, and very important thing to notice, they're not separated by a branch anymore. They've come to the same space. They've gotten closer and they are moving with it, like they move with purpose in the same space now. They've gotten familiar. At least that's how I read it. And this is also a very, very cool shot where she actively looks up. Now obviously she put herself on the table, so Asarola has to look up to her, but that is a purposeful thing, right? You can still kind of look up like this and put your head mostly here and talk to somebody, but she's looking up as if she's seeking guidance. And we just mentioned counsel, right? I can provide counsel to you. There's nobody else who can do it like that. And a second later, we see her looking straight down, and a couple of shots later, we do see her standing. She's not looking down like that, not directly vertically. This is symbolism, right? kind of earth to heaven kind of thing, right? So a higher power comes to help you, to aid you in your woes. And this is kind of the situation we're in right here. And she has magecraft. No, what the fuck? First of all, beautiful, beautiful shot. It's just like supernatural glow of her eyes. Also, what does that mean, magecraft? How are you supposed to understand that? What is that? Some stuff that we're already like, all knowledge of monsters, whatever, right? How supernatural stuff works, or is it something more than that? I mean, obviously she has powers, vampire powers, so right. But magecraft, how do you understand that? Right? How do you put that down? And she's saying, I'm the only one who can stay by your side and give you counsel without dying, whatnot. That's very interesting because we mention all of these things. Where it's like somebody staying at your side who keeps dying, but coming back to life each time. I'm the one and only existence who can give you counsel. But what I'm reading between the lines here is I'm also the only existence that can continuously keep you company, right? I might be in that state for a couple of seconds here and there where I try to kill you and whatnot and die myself. But otherwise, I'm not that affected by you. I mean, it's kind of reminding me of spoilers for ReZero Season 2. I'm holding my hand up as long as the spoilers are, okay? It's kind of reminding me of the Echidna Subaru situation where Echidna was the only one who really knew what was happening to Subaru. And that is a giant relief as somebody who's been traveling the world as a lonely entity, not being able to talk to anyone about these things because they literally, like, when they're in your present, they, after a short while, they're just gonna off themselves and whatnot. That's gotta be insane. So there's an interesting component. I do wonder if that is something she is still able to feel, right? Loneliness, isolation. That is the reasons for emotional distance and all of that, and keeping people at arm's length, because if you open up to them and then they die anyway, or something happens to them. I mean, she's afraid that she's gonna do anything to her, but yeah, I mean, they have very interesting mutual interests, and she looks so beautiful in every shot she's shown. I mean, they do a really good job at displaying with different angles and lighting and the way they stylize her, how much of an impression she has on other people. How much of like, and this is not like beauty in the sense of, oh, look at how I dolled myself up, or beauty in the sense of like exotic beauty. It's beauty in the sense of, like, you would almost say raw beauty, right? In like natural beauty. It's just somebody who, from the aura they have, the atmosphere, the charisma, and also from just also looking very, very good and noble and pure, has that effect on people without anything much of like support or garnishment or jewelry or whatever. She's ecstatic. Look at that. She's like, she has the wriggly lines on like the mouth where she's like very jumpy. Right? Look at that face. That is like an effect that she has on her, but it's not enough. It's not as much as on normal people, and I guess this is why this works. We have the contact again. We use the zoom in and the vision, the unique vision, right? To just display how much she shines in the eyes of other people, and how much it, like, now we do have self-control, right? And we say like no garment between us. It's almost sensual and erotic the way we place it. Right? But it's also, obviously, we do emphasize the hunger, the hungry, the desire. But again, like, for vampires in many myths, eating or sucking blood in this case is also a sensual act, right? Something that you find delicious and enjoy as the act yourself, beyond just like nourishment and whatnot. An invasive softness and texture, right? Invasive. Almost like it's taking you over. And yeah, another death. I do wonder if this is death number 9 or if it's not, right? It's like, I died 3 times due to you specifically. They were not with no purpose, obviously, because we formed that contract now. Cool how we have the 3 candles and they're blowing out, or they're being used all up, and that is the 3 deaths. I died like a devil. I wonder what that means. I have no idea. I have no idea what I died like a devil means. Literally no idea. I wonder why this temptation in Men's Effect is not as strong with Araragi when Kishot meets him in Kizumonogatari. I do wonder that legitimately, because obviously you would assume that the vampire powers to amplify that, maybe. But maybe I'm wrong and the vampirism actually gives her more control over these effects. Or maybe it's even to the point that the monstrosity, right, the monstrosity nature of the vampire does counteract the beauty, right, the supernatural beauty that she had in life. That's also a possibility. 1937 is something I wanted to highlight because I feel like this is a very artistic shot, right? On the one hand, and on the other hand, we do have her letting her rest, kind of almost holding her like a lover that just died, or like a very important person. It kind of, for me, shows that she cares about people, but not enough, because you've seen it a number of times, right? She's grown numb to it, but it doesn't mean that she does not care at all if somebody dies in her presence. And obviously at this point she knows she's a vampire, so she's gonna come back. But it's showing extreme care if you hold somebody in your arms like that, instead of just letting them lie there and be like, whatever, she's gonna wake up later. And then she wakes up and sees her eyes again, which is like, again, very intimate. But yeah, I mean, I guess that was about it. That last part I don't think is all that impressive in terms of like the shots and whatnot. We're just setting up the fact that she is trying to find a way. Oh yeah, that is a cool shot that we can highlight here. Give me a sec. I'm gonna turn off the subtitles. Her eyes, right? Her eyes going into the eyes of the mural, and then we see a mural probably of herself with like the long nails full with blood and the teeth, the sharp teeth, and the blood dripping from them. Very cool how he set up all of this Gothic cathedral kind of stuff. But yeah. We're only setting up the general goal. Obviously, this looks beautiful, almost like a Disney castle, but turned dark, basically. Like I said, the vampire castle in Castlevania. But we set up the motive of her keeping her here, being like, I want to find a way to kill her and eat her, because it's kind of delicious. But also, she fascinates me, right? This is a first for me. And for somebody who's been dead for so long, right, been doing the same shit over and over and over again. Obviously, it would be very interesting to have a very novel and new stimulus. An encounter, an event, a person that is very, very new to you, that you can't pin down to an experience that you've had before. I do wonder, by the way, where she came from, right? If she's kind of supposed to be symbolically like Graf Dracula, like Vlad the Impaler, like the origin of the story, or if she's just a normal vampire that lived back then and vampires were a thing, right? I do wonder if she's the original, or if it's like, there is no original, she's just a vampire. Was kind of like very influential, right? Was probably a lord or like mistress of the entire country we were in. Yeah, very cool, very cool. Also very cool that we do keep the ED that we have. I think that is a cool thing because we have the second verse now, and it's kind of just going over into the second verse. That was Monogatari Off Monster Season Episode 7. I'm very curious as how that continues and what more we can gather from that. I feel like later iterations in an arc will always be deeper and deeper, and we can dig our heels more into that, our teeth more into that, because then we know the context of certain things. We can kind of identify patterns in a better way, interpret meanings more as we see more interactions between the characters, and I'm looking forward to that. Next episode is probably also going to be at this setting. Maybe the episode after that as well. I'll have to check that out, but it's going to be max 3 episodes after that. It's going to be the old place with the old audio quality, so rest assured, I do hope it wasn't too grating. It sounded a little bit echoey, which is what I really don't like that, but I'll take what I have to. I can't take my mic with me at all times, so until then, I'll see you until next week, and I hope you'll have a wonderful week and whatever. Leave me a like and subscribe. Check out the Discord, the Patreon, whatever. I'll see you next time.